A warm good morning to one and all. My greetings to all participants. First of all, I would like to extend my cordial appreciation to Dr. David Sounder, Head of the Department of English, Periyar Arts College, Cuddalore, and his team for organizing this international webinar. On behalf of our college, I thank today's two great resource persons, Dr. Clement Luth, Professor of English, Pondicherry University, and Dr. Michel Foos, Director and Chair, Université de la Réunion, France, for accepting our request to deliver a lecture on visual arts and human values in literature. We are in the dire need of human values as our world is facing conflicting situations everywhere. Human values such as truthfulness, sincerity, honesty, love, brotherhood, peace, and justice are the guiding principle for every human being. Visual arts is the subject where we can exhibit our hidden talents through paintings and images. In this modern world, very powerful messages are conveyed through visual arts. I am sure you are going to have very productive session with these two resource persons today. I wish this international webinar a grand success. Thank you all.
Good morning to one and all. Welcoming the guests who attend any function is our social etiquette. Ladies and gentlemen, let me perform the very pleasant duty of welcoming the guests. First of all, I welcome our beloved principal, Dr. R. Ulagi, to this international webinar program. She is a source of inspiration and motivation to all of us. Under her able guidance and leadership, our college is marching towards all-round development. I welcome you, ma'am. Next, I extend a hearty welcome to our international resource person, Dr. Michel Foos, who is the Director and Chair, Université de la Réunion, France. He is an eloquent speaker and prolific writer. With his sound knowledge and wisdom, he has got the ability and capacity to attract the scholars like a magnet. Welcome, sir. Next, I would like to welcome our resource person, Dr. Clement Luthous, who is a professor of English at Pondicherry University. Dr. Clement is a well-known academician and creative artist. In spite of his hectic schedule, he has consented to give a lecture on literature and visual arts. I welcome you, sir. I will be failing in my duty if I don't welcome all the participants of the program whose active participation and presence is to make this international webinar a grand success. I once again welcome one and all. Before we proceed further, it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Clement Luthous, to the participants. Dr. Clement is an eminent professor of English at Pondicherry University. He is a creative writer, critic, translator, self-taught artist, and specialist in Indian writing in English. He is author of Prabhanjan's Quill and other short stories, and edited books which include Confluence Studies in Comparative Literature and Comparative Discrimination Studies in Literature. He has done UGC minor project on Arvind Roy's works. He is a recipient of Pavendra Pugar Award in 2010 for his outstanding contributions to art and literature. He has visited Réunion University, France, under faculty exchange program and delivered 15 lectures on recent Indian English fiction. He is also a well-known artist, and his works have gone on display at several exhibitions in India and foreign countries like USA, UK, Russia, France, Denmark, and Australia. We are lucky enough to have such a versatile personality as our resource person. Now, he is to enlighten us on the topic literature and visual arts.
Today I am going to speak on literature and visual arts. How literature and visual arts are connected with one another. In fact, in my opinion, that every one of us is an artist. You may ask me how. You go to your old school notebooks, there certainly you will find, at least in the last page, you must have scribbled something which may appear as cartoons or drawings. And you would have continued the same thing even during your college days when the lectures are boring. But unfortunately, we never had that kind of liking, nor we had any kind of inclination to become artists. And therefore, our artistic career should have come to an end almost in the middle. But when we come to literature and art, I may ask you to go to the Egyptian alphabet in order to find out how there is a kind of a link between literature and art. How many of you have seen the Egyptian alphabet? And the Egyptian alphabet is in the form of small figures and symbols, as we call them. They are all beautiful line drawings. And these line drawings would depict a particular image and a particular word, because they will never write in the form of letters, but they will write in the form of pictures. The very ancient alphabet is in the manner of pictures. And therefore, there is always a kind of a link between language and visual arts. I think that without visual arts, language could not exist. And in fact, the Egyptian alphabet has got more than 7,000 symbols. Just imagine, 7,000 symbols. That is not something, insignificant, because this is a larger kind of an alphabet, and every Egyptian should be an artist for that matter, because unless you know thoroughly these symbols, you may not be able to write. You may not be able to read anything. Therefore, art has played such a great role in shaping the language of the ancient times. In literature, you find that there are many great poets who were influenced by arts. And let me take one small example. This is from W.H. Auden. W.H. Auden is a modern British poet, and W.H. Auden wrote his very famous poem, Museum of Fine Arts. And we are reading the poem, we are enjoying it, but how this poem came to be born? What has influenced the poet to write the poem? Well, it's about a visit to Paris Museum, where he saw the great painting, Peter Bruegel's Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. This is a legendary thing, and the painting was awfully good. And the poet was taken aback by this particular painting, and he went on gazing at the picture, and at last this beautiful poem was born. And the poem, now you can say, is as good as the painting. And in fact, you might have seen the great sculpture of Laocoon, the Taurgian priest who has been destroyed by the god Apollo. And everyone appreciates this sculpture. And we do not know anything about the sculptor. But when you happen to see it, you understand, if you happen to be a person interested in literature, Virgil has depicted this particular scene, how he is getting destroyed by Apollo. And whether this particular sculptor had any opportunity of reading Virgil's work, or whether Virgil, the great poet, had any opportunity of looking at this particular sculptor's creation, we do not know, because the time is uncertain, the date is uncertain, so we are not able to understand who has influenced whom. If you take the case of Plato, and he happens to be a person who is dead against art, who is dead against poetry, these are all certain things which would not be of any use in the future world. This great man must have taught in a very different way. But in Plato's Republic, you find that artists and poets have no place. Why? Because, according to him, the world is an imperfect imitation of the perfect original. And the perfect original is somewhere. And this world is nothing but an imperfect imitation of it. And if you imitate this imitation, then you are reducing things to its last syllable. And therefore he thought that the poets and the artists are not doing their duty in the way that it has to be done. Because this kind of recreation, this kind of beauty that you find in the creations of the poets or artists will not be of any use, because they are far from reality. People should understand the reality. Otherwise, nothing will serve them good. But the interesting part of the whole thing is the great man who said poets and artists have no place in his kingdom, himself cannot be influenced by art and artists. For example, Plato's description of the cave, and you might have seen it in the net or in other places and in books also. Several pictures are getting drawn. Through the description, you are able to make out what actually is being described. And several artists have tried it, because it is in the form of an art. It is in a very graphic style that Plato seems to be using certain tools which the artist use, and therefore it becomes quite ironical. The great person, the philosopher who said that the artists have no place in Republic, he himself cannot totally get out from the influence of the art or artists. It is quite obvious. Similarly, the friendship between the great poets and the great artists, they have ended up something that would be very beneficial to the world. And who are the great poets who have been influenced by the great artists as friends? I can give one or two examples. Number one, Oscar Wilde's friendship with the great British painter Whistler. Whistler, during that time, was almost on his peak of the artistic career. And he was a great artist, and people simply adored him. But when you read the biographies of the writer Oscar Wilde and the great painter Whistler, you find that they become friends. And in Oscar Wilde's house, even now, if you visit in London, you find that the entire house has been very beautifully painted by Whistler. There are a lot of pictures, the pictures that Oscar Wilde wanted to be decorated with. And not only that, in Oscar Wilde's poems, you find the influence of art. And some of his narratives and some of his novella also describe to a certain extent that he has been tremendously influenced by paintings, notably by Whistler. And similarly, the friendship between Dickens and the great artist Hubalt Knight Brown. And Hubalt Knight Brown nicknamed himself as Boss. And both of them had a very good friendship, and both of them influenced the world through their paintings and through their writings. And we all know what kind of novelist is Dickens. And Dickens, when he was at the ripe age, wrote the very famous novel Old Curiosity Shop. And some say that this is not a novel with a conclusion because the novel has never been completed. But whatever it is, when this particular novel was issued in installments, you must remember that in those days, books never came out. When the novelists started writing, they issued only in installments, and it appeared in morning newspapers and in magazines. People thronged together in railway station and in many other places to read Dickens' novel Old Curiosity Shop. And in fact, the people were so very much drawn by the beauty of the novel and by the depiction of the character Little Nell, because this particular character has got the profundity to influence people to such an extent that the readers had already fallen in love with this particular character, the little girl. And Dickens used this opportunity to find out the pulse of the readership, because he is a person, he has become very successful because he knows fully well how to influence people through his writings. And the character has been developing very well, and the people also thought that Dickens would give a happy ending to the novel. But Dickens wanted to create a sympathetic wave so that instantly he can become a very powerful writer and a very popular writer, that too. He wanted to kill this little girl, Nell. But when he was waiting for an opportunity to dispose of his character, the readers, they started writing letters to the novelist saying that you will be killed if you kill this character. You understand what kind of influence that this particular character has created in the readers. Because the readers do not like little Nell getting killed. Such a wonderful girl, such a charming girl should not be killed. But at last, as you know, Dickens killed this girl. Why I am telling you? Because some people are of the opinion Little Nell, this particular character, has become tremendously popular not only because of the description of the novelist, but by the beautiful sketches of Boss, the artist, and also a very, very close friend of Dickens. And the artist has depicted the picture of this girl so well that the novel has become very, very successful. And in fact, people at the time wanted to see the sketches in the novel. And they are very much happy when they see Nell appearing in pictures by Boss. And now it goes without telling that both of them, Dickens as well as Boss, they have become popular because of this one particular novel, where you find there is a kind of a merge between art and literature. Another important thing that you must note when we were dealing with this particular topic, literature and visual arts, is how beautifully certain writers would describe a certain scene. It is called exegesis. That is a graphic description of a particular scene by a writer. And in fact, any artist will be influenced when he happens or she happens to read this account, because it has been so beautifully described by the writer. Two examples I can tell you. One is Homer's description of Achilles' shield. It was a very big shield, and in that shield there are many, many descriptions. There are many, many carvings. And Homer brings out the description in such a way that if you happen to be an artist, you would simply sit and draw a picture out of this description. And in fact, the most familiar example that I can go for is Keats' Ode on a Grecian Urn. There also you find how the scene is shifting from one place to another place in the same urn. And it is almost like a person showing you a cup with a number of paintings around it. And you enjoy those pictures. You will see them one by one by rotating the cup. And in that way, Keats also makes us to understand the philosophy of life through these small, small descriptions. And another thing that also should be considered in any discussion of literature and visual arts is the double talent which a couple of writers had. This is called Doppelbegabung in German. And in fact, I am going to discuss with you the very first and prominent writer who has this talent. That is the talent of writing and the talent of drawing, both together. And one such person is William Blake. And William Blake has not been recognized either as an artist or as a poet as long as he lived. And some people say that only after 120 years they have erected a monument in the place he was buried. To that an extent, the great poet has been totally ignored. The reason is quite obvious, because during the 18th century, this is the age of reason, he seems to be demonstrating with imagination. When reason ruled the world, when the scientists are hailed to the skies, William Blake still went on depending on the imagination and thought that the imagination comes first and reason comes next. But in the age of reason, people thought that he must be a mad person to say so. And one cannot keep imagination above reason. And William Blake, on his own part, started criticizing the scientists through his art, because he made a lot of engravings, and these engravings that he has done, you can even now find published in books, published in some illustrated encyclopedias too. And he started drawing pictures for the Bible, and he criticized the great scientist Newton by making him stooping and using a divider trying to measure the entire world. So this is a kind of a trick, I should say rather, William Blake employed in order to criticize the scientists and the absurd things. What actually he thought as absurd things later proved to be very useful to the world. But as far as the poet is concerned, he will not simply accept the scientific progress. That is the problem. But as I already told you, William Blake comes now under great artists category. And in fact, there are people who would enjoy his artistic skills more than his literary side. And you must have seen the pictures drawn by William Blake, and that would have everlasting influence in literature and also in arts. But at the same time, you should remember that such a great poet who has written the poem, The Tiger and the Lamb, can also make sketches for the poems that he has done, and the poem is different, and the picture that he has drawn for the poem is entirely different. And in fact, you may wonder, after seeing the picture of the tiger that he has drawn and the tiger that has been described in the poem, they are polar apart. It is something very difficult to believe it is the same poet who has drawn the illustration for his poem, or whether he has allowed some other artist to do it. For the simple reason that in The Tiger and the Lamb, the tiger you come across happens to be a very, very big tiger, a tiger that you can't even easily imagine, very powerful, very cruel, and something very, very dangerous too. But on the contrary, the lamb has been depicted as a very meek and timid animal. To make this contrast only, the tiger has been projected in such a grand manner. But William Blake has drawn the picture of the same tiger for the poem. Here you find the tiger seems to be a cartoon kind of a tiger, and partly hidden behind a tree, very shy, and the tiger is not even coming out from the place where it has been hidden. Why this kind of a difference comes in the description and in their painting? Because the same muse is only influencing both the skills. Because this is not actually the skill given to two persons. He is two in one. A person who has both the talents together. Therefore, the poetic muse that has been helping him to make this tiger as a magnificent creature, it is the same, self-same muse that has been allowing the poet to draw the sketch of the tiger in such a different manner. It is quite surprising. Only when you happen to see the painting, you will understand what it is. The next person who is at once a great artist and a novelist is none other than Thackeray. And Thackeray has come out with forceful novels, and these novels are very important in literature. And usually when you ask a student of literature and when you make a mention of Thackeray, he would immediately associate this great novelist with his very famous novel Vanity Fair. And people may not be knowing much about the other novels, but Vanity Fair is a very famous novel and a very popular novel that too. And this has been prescribed for UG and PG level, and we are all reading the novel with great interest. But how many of us have read the novel with 123 and odd pictures drawn by the novelist himself? Because William Makepeace's Thackeray comes under the category of artists. As I already told you, that under great artist series, you find Thackeray playing a great role. And in fact, he comes under this particular category, great artist. And he is a great illustrator. Therefore, he did not go for anybody for illustrating his novels. He himself has done it. In the beginning of the novel, you find small-sized pictures. But in the middle and in the last pages, you find one full length. That means one full page drawing of the novelist. And being an artist, this has helped him much, because in that particular novel, the two important characters, Becky Sharp and Jo, and among the women characters created by Thackeray, Becky Sharp happens to be a person who is very powerful, but at the same time, a person cannot be so easily slighted up. Very powerful character. And in that way only this particular woman has been depicted. And when you come to the last part of the novel, there is a murder. Jo is murdered. And who is the killer? We are not able to get any clue out of the novel. Even if you read the novel hundreds of times, you may not be able to get the result. That means the death of the hero is there, but who killed the hero, we have no idea. And we are told that in the interviews, this question has been constantly asked to the great novelist himself. Sir, could you please tell us who killed Jo? Because we are not able to find out. You are not giving us any clue to find out who is the murderer. But the novel used to get up and he will make an escape. And smilingly he would tell the interviewers that, I'm sorry, I don't know, you have to find it out. How can you find it out? The novelist himself is not giving you any clue. The novelist himself is not telling you who has killed Jo. But when you read the novel with the illustrations I already told you, done by the great novelist himself, there you are able to get a clue. Because in the last page, Thackeray seems to be providing a picture of Clytemnestra, who happens to be a very important Greek character. And when you happen to see this particular character, there is a description about that. The novelist says, I am just providing you a picture of this woman because Becky Sharp during her college days acted as Clytemnestra. That is the only thing that we get. But if you know a little about the Greek literature, you know very easily that this is the woman who has killed her husband. Well, we got the clue. What more evidence is needed? Because the historical character is included by way of a drawing. And you've seen this girl and the scene depicted there. You can see this particular woman, and in her hands you also find a cup of poison, because her husband has been poisoned by this legendary heroine. And why this particular illustration has been given? And you may say that just like that, no, but it has got its own clue to offer. And that is why the novelist insisted that the readers have to find out who is the murderer. And he has given enough clue. I think that there is no need for him to provide any further clue. It is there. And we know that this legendary woman killed the husband. And why not Becky, killing Joe? It is something very marvelous on the part of the novelist. Since he happens to be an artist, he was able to provide the clue by way of an illustration. Now the question is, if Thackeray is not an artist, what he would have done? I don't think that he must have asked others to do it. And the novel would have ended as a bottomless novel, and you have to come out with your own conclusions, and you would still rate it as an inconclusive one. But since Thackeray happened to be number one artist of his times, he thought that he himself can offer a clue by way of an illustration, and that illustration is something very, very important for the whole novel. But at the same time, I also want to draw your attention to some of the pictures drawn by the novelist in order to depict the very famous character Becky Sharp. I already told you that Becky Sharp happens to be a very powerful woman, something more than larger than life size, we say. Such a woman, when you look at the picture, you find the novelist is not giving that kind of prominence that he has given in the novel for this particular individual. Because the Becky Sharp that you find in his pictures happens to be a kind of a shy woman, a kind of a woman who has a withdrawn nature. Even though it happens to be an ordinary sketch, line drawing, he used to say. And even in that line drawing, he is not able to give that kind of grandeur that you find when he is depicting the character. Again, the problem comes. The same muse who has been helping the novelist to write the novel and to make such rich characters. Why the same muse fails at the time when the novelist is simply projecting the picture of the woman he has so forcefully depicted in the novel? It's a matter of choice. And sometimes you wonder, the novelist knows fully well how powerful the character is, and had he thought for some time that the character has to be projected only in this way through his drawings, he could have accomplished the deed in a beautiful manner. But unfortunately, this is where you find that he has been failing miserably. Now let us come to our own poet Tagore, a versatile genius and a person who wrote Gitanjali and got the Nobel Prize for it. And in fact, several critics are of the opinion that Gitanjali happens to be the greatest work ever written in literature. Such beautiful poems you find in Gitanjali. And Tagore, at the later stage, when he was aging, and during the last part of his career only, he switched over to art and started making many paintings. And in fact, the total number of paintings he made may be roughly 1,573 and odd, they say. But unfortunately, some of these pictures were stolen recently, and a very big search was going on to find out what happened to those pictures. But When you take the strong characters produced by Tagore, and when you happen to see the paintings, as I told you, which he started doing it only in the later part of his life, they are totally different. The women projected in the poems and in some of his works, they happen to be very powerful and very magnificent kind of women, very brave, and in fact that you can say that they are typical Indian women and very courageous. But when he comes to paintings, you find there are many paintings of women, because he started making some animal characters in the beginning and later switched over to women characters. And when you analyze the women characters alone in his paintings, you find that they are very hopelessly pessimistic. You find only some kind of wailing woman, women lamenting, women with long hair crying, that kind of thing is there. When the poems are so positive, when the poem, in every nerve of that poem you find some kind of Indianness and bravery, why this muse has totally failed Rabindranath Tagore to give such vigor and vitality to his own creations, in the sense that to his drawings, to his paintings? He has not done so. As an artist, I would rate them as very pessimistic pieces only. Those are not women of our choice. Those are not women we often see in the papers and in the Indian legends, Idihasas and Puranas. He could have gone for those type of typical women, but unfortunately the women are very weak and totally lacking in vitality, etc. And therefore, again there is a problem that we are now facing. The same muse which has helped Tagore to write Gitanjali, why the same muse is not helping him out to make the paintings a little more positive? You find only negativeness all over, and pessimism seems to be ruling the entire field of his arts. That's all I can say. But at the same time, sometimes the critics are of the opinion, especially the art critics, that Tagore is colorblind. Color blindness is a kind of a problem that some artists would face, and they don't like one particular color, and sometimes orange and yellow and green, they are all taken together as one color. They are not able to make a clear-cut distinction among them. And Tagore belongs to this category, they say. And perhaps when you find in his paintings certain things that you may find sober or weak, maybe because of the color weakness also, you can say, the color blindness of what you call now. But it doesn't mean that these colors only add some kind of vigor or vitality to his creations, but there are other facts. Even the themes, for example, are not properly handled. And he seems to be taking, as I already told you, the women who are not in their, beauty. They appear to be very timid and they are not courageous at all. Thus it is very interesting to see the three great writers. They are at once artists too, but they had two different kinds of vision as far as their writings and paintings are concerned. There is a famous quote in the Bible: in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. I think as an artist, in the beginning, not only the word existed, but also the picture. And therefore, words and picture go simultaneously to influence the writers and the artists. Thank you so much.
On behalf of English Department and my personal behalf, I sincerely thank our resource person, Dr. Clement, who has given us an excellent lecture on literature and visual arts. Now I take immense pleasure in introducing our international speaker, Dr. Michel Foos, who serves as the Director and Chair, Université de la Réunion, France. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them, so says William Shakespeare. Dr. Michel Foos achieved greatness in his life by dint of hard work. He has taught in many countries, including India. He is an expert in Indian English fiction. He is author of the book Aken Narayan, A Painter of Modern India, which was published in the year 1995. He used to visit India frequently. We will now listen to his speech on human values in literature.
Human Values in Literature, Michel Foos. When Dr. David Saunders asked me to deliver the opening speech of this seminar, I welcomed the proposal as the topic struck me for its relevance in a fast-changing world in which we witness a questioning of human values. It seems that nations and within nations, people disagree about the meaning of human values. This is nothing new. At the end of the Second World War, when Europe, the US, and the USSR regarded themselves as the center of the world, the human values people strived for were not the same in the free world. And in the communist bloc, to say nothing of the many colonized countries who were just beginning, apart from India, the long fight for independence. Today, the concept of human values varies between democracies, dictatorships, and the in-between, governments elected in a democratic sense but imposing an authoritarian form of government. Such governments are often referred to as democratorship. To implicate matters within each society, social group, and varying sizes contests, often violently, the values that should cement together a large majority of the population. When I gladly accepted this invitation, I, as I said, found the topic relevant and interesting. I very soon realized that it was also challenging and incredibly complex. To put it simply, it proved to be extraordinarily difficult to tackle. Let us first deal with what is at the heart of the problem: human values. Only when we have defined them can we try and think of inculcating them. The first question that comes to mind when debating human values is, are they universal? Can human values be anything but universal? As Shakespeare would have it, there is the rub. If two individuals discussed human values over a cup of tea and tried to draw a list of what they both regarded as human values, they would soon disagree about some items to be included in that list. Imagine if there were 4 people and if the list was meant to apply not only to a specific society but to the whole of mankind. Let me make a comparison with the animal world. Among animals, each species has its own values. Obviously, tigers don't share the vision of wildlife with deer. Unlike the animal world, the human species is one, the same, the world over. How come we cannot expect these unique species to share common values, universal values? Generally speaking, everybody would agree, hopefully, that the preservation of individual life is universally valued. No society values a criminal act, be it murder, theft of something, theft or destruction of property. As far back as the Hammurabi Code, which is about 1700 BCE, individuals already had to accept a common code for the implementation of justice. Every religion, through its sacred text, imposes social codes to be respected. The retaliation law, commonly known as a knee for a knee, a tooth for a tooth, never was socially acceptable. Gandhi commented upon it. The old law of a knee for a knee leaves the whole world blind. What else could be of universal value? There is a document that can be referred to as regards universal rights, the Declaration of Human Rights, which was originally signed by 48 nations in 1948. The United Nations document was part of the post-war efforts to try and avoid a return of the barbarian practices which took place in the fascist nations, particularly Nazi Germany. The 30 articles of this document list rights more than values. However, put together, those rights can be regarded as making up values to be universally respected. Rights, however, are subject to interpretation. For instance, Article 3 guarantees the right to life. No one can disagree. But it is concept of life universally. When does life start? At which stage of pregnancy? From the definition one gives, the right to abort will vary from one country to another. Hence, a fetus might be given a chance to live when another one will be denied it. Article 18 guarantees freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This article includes the right to change religion. If no political power can prevent individual freedom of thought, it can prevent its expression, and many governments impose one religion and condemn apostasy. In 1948, many of today's countries were colonies. Only 56 nations were eligible to sign the document. Unanimity was not obtained as 8 nations abstained, which was equivalent to objecting. Out of those 8, 6 belonged to the communist bloc, including the USSR. They were joined by Saudi Arabia for obvious religious reasons, South Africa, which had just imposed the apartheid. Generally speaking, however, this document was praised, although it met with criticism. Some Muslim readers read it as a secular understanding of Judeo-Christian traditions. In the year 2000, some Muslim nations signed the Cairo Declaration, which refers to freedom and the right to live a dignified life in accordance with the Islamic Sharia. This contradicts Article 18 of the original declaration. The right to live is probably universally shared, but the right of individual citizens to live according to their own wishes is denied by many a constitution. This reference to the Human Rights Declaration just shows how difficult it is for the people the world over to agree on a single set of values or laws. We accept that laws are different from one country to another, but how far do we tolerate the differences? Trying to define a single universal human value belongs to philosophy. After all, we only refer to human values in the plural, or to a particular human value, which is a proof that human values are varied, hence are of comparative values. The word value comes from a Latin valere, which means to estimate. I'm sorry. Every object has a value which can be officially priced or which can be individually estimated. People naturally value what they do not have. In dictatorship, freedom of expression, access to a free press will be regarded as an essential human value everyone should be entitled to. On the other hand, population facing empty plate, we ask for food regardless of the type of government, be it social or individual. Its human value is ranked differently. When at war, each side fights for the defense of its own values. During the First World War, French, British, and German troops equally fought for what they saw as the defense of civilization. The French, the British, and the German each believed they were an incarnation of civilization. We can wonder what sort of civilization the Indians and African soldiers engaged in the conflict, or forcibly drawn into it, were fighting for. Were the Silk soldiers defending the values of British civilization when the crown was oppressing them at home? This is a question. Each individual will have his own set of values alongside of or against what I would call official national values. At that point, we could concrete each one to his own values. Every individual, academic or other, can inculcate his own value to his students, pupils, children, relatives, etc. This cannot be a conclusion to the debate. We have to see in how much those values are in fact social and how much they can be individual, which might bring them into conflict with the social ones. We all live in social and polarized societies, which means we have to accept common social rules, common social values. At the same time, we all have our personal set of values, which can be perfect harmony with the social imposed ones, or which can conflict with those partially or completely, which in many countries is likely to cause serious problems. As I said earlier, in every country, social group publicly object to societal norms accepted by the majority, groups who fight abortion laws, same-sex marriage, animal killing, etc. This raises the following question which is my set of values more important than the generally accepted ones? A serious question in democratic countries. I speak here of societal opposition, not political opposition, which belongs to a different sphere of public life. Having made clear that human values cannot be listed or even accurately defined, we have to deal with the problem of inculcating them. How to inculcate something which is not a knowledge, which is in constant evaluation, and can grade it from the individual to the social. The problem with inculcating human values is that there is no such thing as a degree in human values. No one reads human values at university. It is not even part of a regular syllabus. The title of this conference, Inculcating Human Values in Literature, is very appropriate. Any language which does not evolve dies slowly. We can say that all things making up the cultural background of any civilization are living elements and such as and as such they must evolve for better or worse. To complete, we must remember that what we call the culture of any present civilization must take into consideration the history of the civilization and place it in perspective with a more general evolution of the world. Can we condemn people who lived in the past centuries because their action reflected values which are no longer ours? Voltaire is remembered and lauded for his commitment to the cause of intellectual freedom and his denunciation of any form of absolute power. He was a greater humanist, yet he invested a lot of money in the slave trade and in the colonial French East India Company. In his days, those two attitudes were not regarded conflictual as they will do today. In the US, there is a movement to remove Columbus's status on the ground that he brought with him colonialized slavery, European diseases. Can he really be held responsible for it? Before coming to the conclusion, I would like to mention hard sciences, a field generally regarded as outside the humanities, but which, in my opinion, cannot escape the field of human values. It is often said that sciences like mathematics, physics, medicine, are neutral and do not convey values as such. Possibly, but such sciences exist only because of the scientists themselves. They are human beings who have political and human values. I shall not expand on the point, but you see what it means. What are the human values of a nuclear physicist who devoted his research to conceive a nuclear weapon able to destroy half mankind in a single shot? Those who developed the atomic bomb in the 1940s will tell you that they did it for the good of a cause they thought just, to fight an enemy who, in their opinion, was an incarnation of evil. The problem is that At the same time, Hitler's all scientists were thinking the same. These scientists lived in social contexts where human values were different. Very briefly, inculcating human values when teaching history is to remember that official history is written by winners. The loser side or even alternative possibilities should also be taught. History is important because it deals with every component of society. Hence, it shows us how national values have evolved through centuries in history. Every action must be placed within the context of the time, within the human values of the time. This is extremely difficult to do. Now, a few words to conclude. How to inculcate human values. From what I have said so far, I would come to the conclusion that there is a prerequisite for the inculcation of human values and that there is a method. The prerequisite is freedom of thought and opinion. Clearly speaking, no state, no political body, no community should impose its vision of human values. It would imply segregation and exclusion, which is contrary to the very concept of human values. The method is individual, but it requires tolerance and understanding. Understanding does mean accepting everything. The idea is to see a consensus emerge from an intellectual and human approach, and not by political or military might. Inculcate human values is permanent. It's a permanent fight because they are concepts we can only strive for, and as they are in a permanent state of evolution, we must accept that they represent a passing form of mind, an intellectual approach to mankind. Inculcating human values is the opposite of a one-way street. It is open to all and every influence, and this is why human values are an ideal, which, like all ideas, is difficult to materialize in concrete terms and action. But we have to constantly strive for it. I repeat, it is open to all and every influence, and this is why human values are an idea, which, like all ideas, is difficult to materialize in concrete terms and actions, but we have to constantly strive for it. Thank you.
Friedrich Nietzsche has said that the essence of all beautiful art is gratitude. Being well said, I, Dr. P. Gandhimati, on behalf of the Department of English, Periyar Government Arts College, Cuddalore, deem it a great honor to propose a vote of thanks to the academic fraternity who had been helping us in conducting this international webinar on visual arts and human values in literature. I thank Dr. R. Ulagi, our principal and the patron of this webinar, for her untiring motivation and goodwill. I thank Dr. S. David Sounder, the convener of this webinar and the head of the Department of English, Periyar Government Arts College, Cuddalore, for his noble initiative of conducting this webinar. On behalf of our department, we extend our gratitude to our distinguished resource persons, Dr. Michel Foos, Director and Chair, Department of English, Université de la Réunion, France, and Dr. Clement Luth, Professor of English, Pondicherry University, for enlightening us on the topics of human values and visual arts and literature, and thereby guiding us to introspect on positive thinking at this time of the fiasco. I extend my gratitude to the participants of this international webinar and supporting this initiative. I'd also like to thank the organizing committee members for their support and coordination. We should also at this moment thank the good Samaritans who are fighting to keep us safe. And finally, we should also thank the technology that has made this webinar possible. Thank you.